All right. Hey everyone. This is a 10 to 15 minute tutorial on how to use DocWrangler to write pipelines that use LLMs to process your data. I'll be looking at a sample of around 5,000 ICLR paper reviews for the 2025 conference, and I'm going to look for things that reviewers commonly complain about. So to get started, I'm running the local host version of DocWrangler, just so I don't have to enter my API keys for everyone to see in this video. But if you're using the hosted version, you want to start by setting some API keys, whichever ones you have. We use Light LLM under the hood. Then you'll want to kind of upload your data set. So I've pre-populated this iClear data set, and I'll post the code to how I did that in the YouTube video description when I upload this. And then I'll click on this data set viewer to kind of inspect it. So it'll probably take some time to load all the statistics because it's just a bigger data set. But basically every document is a JSON object with the key content. So there are 100 documents in the sample. I have tried to group together reviews for each paper. And on average, I don't remember exactly how many reviews there are per document. Probably around 50, maybe a little bit over 50. But it's just a lot of natural language text to make sense of. So you can go through, search it if you would like. But for the purposes of this, I'm going to go through and start writing a DocETL pipeline. The first thing I want to do is give this a useful name. Maybe that's analyze iClear reviews. And kind of set up my system prompts accordingly. So this will be a collection of clear 2025 submissions, views from open review. And maybe the persona or kind of who I want the data processing assistant to emulate is a CS researcher. And we added this kind of system configuration here because we noticed when people were building DocETL pipeline for their data, it helped to kind of put the persona as an expert. At least outputs became much more relevant to the task. Maybe I will set the sample size to 10, which all it'll mean is whenever I write operations, the pipeline will execute just on a sample. The first thing I did was I added a map operation. A map operation means we create one output or one structured output. It could even be a list type output. But the point is every document gets one output. And when we start off creating DocETL pipelines, at a high level, I know that I want to find common complaints that reviewers have. But I don't exactly know the prompt that I want. That's very hard. No one's going to know that off the bat. Nobody knows what the LLM is going to say. So I'll start by kind of creating something vague and then look at my outputs to see if I can steer my prompt from that. So maybe I'll say extract common complaints. And then the prompt that I want to execute on each document can be very vague, like find common weaknesses or complaints that reviewers have in these paper pages. And prompts are Jinja templates. If you're not familiar with Jinja, you can kind of Google that. But it's just a templating engine, and we want to refer to these documents as input, and it refers to specific key value pairs as input dot the key. So we know that content is our key here. So all this is going to do is when this prompt runs, the document text, the content value will be injected. And then for my output schema, so this is what new key value pairs do I want to add to each document as a result of this operation. So I might say something like common weaknesses, common complaints report. And right now I'm just going to have it be a string because I want it to be formatted in a way that I can look through and see what the LLM thinks is useful. And maybe I want to use I don't know, I've been interested in Gemini lately, so let's try one of the Gemini models. Gemini 2.0. I think it's experimental slash experimental. Honestly, I don't remember the exact name, so I'm just going to do 1.5 Pro. I know that exists. Um, so all of this is pretty good. I can kind of close this data set. Then I would click the run button. And the query plan is extremely simple. We're just literally running this map operation on our data set. And it might take a little bit of time to run because these are really long documents and LLM is generating a full report for each one. So maybe it'll take like 25, 30 seconds. Well, maybe it'll be faster. Ooh, that costs $1. Maybe Gemini 1.5 Pro is expensive. Maybe I'll move to Flash or Mini, 4.0 Mini or something. But anyways, so oof, before I clicked on that, maybe I should explain what this is. So this output viewer is kind of like a table, big table, spreadsheet-like viewer where you can see a row per document. So right now, there are only going to be two columns because we know the documents only had one key, the content key, and this operation created a new key or new column, which is a common complaints report. Um, and there are only 10 documents in from the sample and 10 documents came out. And this kind of shows the output to input ratio. Not really relevant for math operations. It's always going to be one. But when we have different types of operations, for example, unnesting or flattening out the data, say this was a list type output, and we wanted to flatten it to get a row per list element, then this output to input ratio becomes really interesting and important. So you can see how much data the LLM generates per row. Okay, so here's the output table. These histograms tell us the response lengths. Right now, they're not super meaningful because this outputs are of string type. So they'll just tell us the word counts. Some of them are long, some of them are shorter. If it were a list, if it were an int or Boolean, or even categorical variable, this might be more interesting or relevant. Say if we were to categorize the weakness types. And every row, if you hover over this I indicator, it gives you observability. What was the prompt for it? So it's exactly what we said, find common weaknesses. And then we injected the review content. Nobody really wants to read all of this. It's a really long one. And if I want to look at a column in particular, the row by row view, this is very helpful. You should always do this when you're inspecting LLM outputs. You can click on the expander and kind of see this was a 90th percentile length output. So this was a longer output than we typically had. If I want to see the content or search over that, I can do that here. And other keys can also show up here if you have more in your document. Oops, accidentally X'd out of that. All right, so now let me start by reading over this. Okay, so reviewer concerns are limited scope of application. Interesting. Okay, insufficient experiments. That's a common one. I've gotten that a lot in my own papers. And interesting. Computational costs and efficiency. One of the things I have when reading this is, and now I'm realizing that what I really want to do is find complaints that kind of make or break the review. So not just like complaints that reviewers have that don't really affect their score. It's the complaints that make them have the low score. So in my future prompt or in a future iteration, I might want to say something like that or be able to extract something like that. But for now, to be able to communicate that preference, I can use this notes feature. I might say like, I'm interested in complaints that actually meaningfully impact the reviewer's score, not just any complaint. So, or the complaints that seem small. A note. Okay, so I'll keep reading. Lack of clarity, presentation issues, totally. Okay, reliance on retraining. Interesting about limited novelty here. Something that thinking about while reading this is actually maybe I want a whole hierarchy of, limited novelty complaints. So I want a drill down into limited novelty. Like it does seem like pre-trained models are probably just one specific aspect. Um, so anyways, I'll add that. I'll keep going. A good rule of thumb is to like continue always looking at your data until if you feel like you've learned a lot and you're ready for a next pass. You're not learning that much that's new. Um, or if you want concrete numbers, at least have 5 notes before you move on. Okay, so common complaints report here. So this one off the bat, like this is short, very short. We should have at least 3 categories of complaints extracted with supporting evidence from many papers / reviews. Okay, that was an easy one. Another thing that I'm noticing is that the LLM gives us kind of a different format for every single output. Maybe that's good, bad. I think it's good in that I'm seeing a lot of different formats and I'm more likely to be able to pick something that I like. But it's important to keep in mind, like if you want a standardized format, maybe you can say something like, I really like this format in your notes. But anyways, the specific to individual papers, well, I'm not interested in the ones that are specific. I'm only interested in common weaknesses. Okay, common complaints, cite the sources. There should be at least 3 reviews per complaint. Okay. I feel like I'm seeing my complaints of these complaints are kind of converging. Um, okay. Presentation errors should be its own section. Presentation clarity, weaknesses. All right, I'm gonna kind of stop because I feel like I have um, a lot that I want in the next round. So the next thing I can do is I want a better version of this operation, a better version of this prompt that incorporated a lot of the feedback that I gave. I can click this improve prompt button, which if you want to use your own OpenAI key to invoke this prompt engineering assistant, you definitely can. Otherwise, it relies on ours, as part of the DocETL's stack. But basically, it does exactly what this modal says. Here's the current prompt. Here is the notes that we gave, as well as the link. At least the AI also knows like what the notes were about. And then I can give some optional instructions too, but honestly, I don't really have any. And I'll continue to analysis. Great. So I got a new suggested prompt. And it's a pretty big diff. So it says focus on impactful complaints. Identify complaints that significantly affect the reviewer's score. I do want to rewrite that seem to affect the reviewer's score. Okay. Back to the diff that I want to see. Categorization. Organize the complaints into 3 distinct categories. Hmm. All right, all of this looks pretty good. But what I'm realizing is hmm, yeah. Well, it missed the limited novelty thing. Like I wanted limited novelty to be its own section. I might say that. I wanted limited novelty. So this thing that I'm invoking right here is a way to refine to get the prompt assistant to refine this prompt. Sometimes it's just easier to do that than to directly edit the prompt itself. All right, so let's see. And what did it do? Huh, it did not actually add it. Limited novelty complete. You did not have an instruction for having limited own section of. This is the peril of using AI or LLMs to help you write prompts. Okay, so here's a limited novelty section. That's helpful. And then the other thing that I wanted was I also wanted kind of a hierarchy of complaints. So maybe limited novelty was the umbrella, but I wanted more fine-grained categories underneath that. So maybe I'll instruct it. The prompt should also have a hierarchy of categories like subsections under the section. Great. Subsection. Cool. And then finally, the last thing is I don't really want the categories to be specific to this. Maybe I'll say um, categories need not be specific to what we mentioned. There can be others that are groupings. Great. So hopefully fourth time's the charm on this prompt. For example, okay, that's nice. Cool. All right, so I'm going to save this prompt, and then I'll clear all the notes that I gave just because I don't feel the need to keep them. They've already kind of been incorporated. And then I will rerun this. Okay. All right, so let us take a look at the new version. All right, so limited practicality, lack of strong or state-of-the-art baselines. Yeah, that's common. I want a data set diversity. Interesting that there's quite a few papers that seem to be on that. Incremental contributions. Interesting. I do feel like methodological concerns might not necessarily be part of clarity. Oh, wait, no, it's not. I'm unable to distinguish. Okay, interesting. What I am interested in also is how accurate this is. So if I were to say paper 301 review 1, limited practicality, see this weakness, important baselines. Yeah, limited applicability, that's true. Anyways, I could keep going. Um, let's look at the next one. Limited novelty, missing or weak baselines. What I'm realizing now when I'm reading this is I actually want to know what are the most common complaints, period. On like, or rank them in terms of, you know, how frequently they are appearing in the data set. So perhaps that is another iteration of this. Um, but I also kind of observed that, you know, we are sticking to this hierarchy, um, LLM, VLM usage. Oh, sorry, VLM usage. That's funny. Yeah, I see that we're kind of sticking to the hierarchy that we said in the prompt. So maybe our prompt was a little too specific. But on the other hand, this is a good set of categories. Like the LLM did derive that hierarchy by looking through all of the sample outputs. So I think it just goes towards, you know, what do you want? What is the analyst's personal preference and kind of what they are hoping to gain from this? So I think off the bat, you know, this looks good to me. For the sake of time, I probably will stop here. If you're interested in kind of a longer version of this, I'll post another longer video later. But this is kind of just to showcase all of the features that we have in DocWrangler. The last thing I will want to showcase is our AI assistant. So maybe the best way to do that is to add an operation. Perhaps we will do a reduce type operation. And maybe what we'll want to do is summarize these summaries. So find the most common complaints and rank them based on the number of sources. So maybe, hopefully, a model will be able to do that. 1.5 Pro. Find most common complaints. And I'll explain this a little bit. So reduce key all means that I want all of these documents to be in one group. If I wanted to, I could, you know, have this earlier map operation extract another key and then group by that key as the reduce key. And then we would have a group or an answer per group or per distinct value of that key. Feel free to kind of post on Discord if you have any questions about that. But off the bat, maybe I want to have a first pass of what this prompt is going to be. And to do that, I could ask the AI assistant. Well, the assistant is a chatbot that kind of sees what you see, but it's a chatbot, right? So it's just an AI, it's just an LLM with context, but it still can output wrong things, unfortunately. So maybe I'll say something like, I want a reduce operation to get the most common complaints and organize. Okay, organize them by count, roughly. And let's see what it tells us. Oh, interesting. Well, I want an LLM-powered reduce, not a code-powered reduce. Okay. Cool. Given the following complaints reports from various reviews, identify the most common complaints and organize them by frequency. That makes a lot of sense to me. So I'll copy that. And you'll notice how this prompt works is it's looping through all of the common complaints reports in this operation's inputs. So the inputs are basically every row that you see in this table here. And when this prompt renders, we'll show you by hovering over the eye icon, but it will basically just have a big list of these reports. Various sets of reviews. Okay, and then for the output schema, what did it suggest? A list of most common complaints, complaint and count. But I want a report, so I might say most common complaints report. I might say like format query response as markdown. All right. So that's all for the chat, and then I will run this whole thing. Note that if I press the green run button, it will read from the cache. If I press run fresh, it will run the entire pipeline from scratch. So yeah. Great. All right. So insufficient experimental validation seems to be the most common one, with limited novelty, incremental contribution, unclarity in presentation issues, concerns about methodology, technical approach. Interesting. Yeah. Anyway, so this whole thing also, keep in mind that it ran on a sample of 10 documents, and each document has around 50 or so reviews. So this was on a random sample of 500 reviews, and we could definitely scale it up by removing this or downloading the pipeline, running it on our full data set. We probably want to use a cheaper model, but on the grand scheme of things, it costs $2.50 to get to a pipeline that I think is pretty good. So yeah, there's that. This was the most simplest MapReduce pipeline I could think about for this data set. And in future videos, we will have more complex pipelines with different operators. If you want to create a video, that would be awesome too. And feel free to ask on Discord if you have any questions.